Welcome. We're really excited to see so much interest in manga. My name is Mai. This is Jeannie and Karen. So who is Manga Start? Manga Start was founded in 2006. We're a group of US professional artists. We're all sharing the common background of traditionally trained artists, but we also practice the manga art in our profession, whether it's freelance or, in my case, I do it full time. We have been practicing collectively for over 10 years. We have published works with Antarctic Press, which is actually one of the first US comic companies to publish manga. We also have published works with Dark Horse and Marvel Comics. We're all college educated, and in our lesson plans, we try to keep it fun. You know, the idea is to use manga as a hook and kind of use that to lead into the more traditional art lessons. So what is manga? You guys are all pretty familiar, so I'm going to just go over this very briefly. It's a Japanese word that literally translates into whimsical pictures. In the US, it's come to mean any comic that has originated from Japan. The stories tend to emphasize more on character. They emphasize more of a mood, expressions. There's also more of a focus on environments, and it's very much like film. As far as the role of manga in the professional industry right now, I want to talk a little bit about the beginning. I think about roughly 5 years ago, a company called Tokyo Pop got into the business of translating manga, and there was a huge influx of manga into the bookstores. So it actually has influenced the comic industry. A lot of artists start to pick it up. So you start to see a lot of professional works that have a bit of a hybrid of the Western style and also the manga style. When we were actually in school, a lot of teachers thought it was a fad. You know, they didn't quite understand it. But basically, we want to let you know that it's here to stay. You know, and there's definitely a growing need in the comic industry, cartooning industry, animation industry, and as well as advertising.
So I'm going to go over a little bit of history of manga, since art and history always go hand in hand. So the earliest beginnings of manga you can actually find in the 12th century in Japan through woodblock printing. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen woodblock printing. One man's work in particular was Katsushika Hokusai, who was a very popular 19th century woodblock artist and printmaker. His work was very innovative for his time because he broke away from the typical content and subject matter that a lot of woodblock printing had in those times. He would not just draw like aristocrats or emperors and things like that, but he often produced work that had everyday activities, had people from all walks of life, animals and things like that. And actually, the term manga was used back then, but manga in that time, for him in particular, meant he had a series of sketchbooks that had like everyday drawings and stuff, and that was the term manga then. Modern manga, however, it had its most advancement actually after World War II. So manga had about a 50, 60-year history where it really exploded during that time. After World War II, obviously, Japan was in utter turmoil, and the government was trying to build up its economy again and its structure. The people were very, very depressed. And comics during that time did exist, actually, obviously, and the government used comics to spread propaganda through newspapers and things like that. When there's struggle, artists rise above. And so during these turbulent times, artists were looking for a new way to express themselves and to express the things that were going on. And when they found manga, there was a huge art boom. And also during this time, Walt Disney Studios was becoming prominent, and they were creating very innovative, very creative work, creating characters that were extremely appealing, like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and things like that. And they were also producing very amazing films that were inspiring people all over the world. And one such man who was inspired by Disney was Osamu Tezuka. Have anyone heard of Osamu Tezuka? Kind of? Astro Boy? Astro Boy? Yeah. So Osamu Tezuka is pretty much known as the father of manga and anime. So he was a total fanatical Disney fan, and you can see some of his work here. He's well known for Astro Boy and then Kimba the White Lion. So a lot of his work was very progressive at this time because, like Disney, he really focused on expression and exaggeration and characters portraying emotion. So at 19 years old, he was actually a medical student before. He produced his first major work, which was Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. So he made a manga version of that. And the great thing is, despite the utter desolate and depressing times and the pretty much non-existent publishing industry in Japan after World War II, he sold 400,000 copies of that. And so after Osamu Tezuka and many others like him during those next 10, 15 years, they really caught on to manga, and it was a huge art boom, basically, and people accepted it as an art form. So now that you know history of manga, so I'm going to go over a few basic manga characteristics. So first of all, manga is generally printed in black and white, and this was because manga was originally mass-produced in magazines, and so obviously it was more economically cheaper, and having black and white art, it was easier to reproduce because of the high contrast, things like that. The Japanese language was traditionally written from right to left rather than reading left to right, and it was also vertical. It was like written vertical, and so a lot of manga, most manga actually, is still written in that format. When you see translations, the translated versions that are domestically released, they will also flip right to left, even though the writing you still read, but it's actually still in that same direction where you read the left top first, and then you go the right top first, and you go all the way down. So. Thematically, manga, and this is a very important thing. So manga is extremely versatile. Like it has the way it's set up. It's capable of having a wide variety of storylines. I mean, you can have comics about like mundane daily activities, like a schoolgirl, going through her pubescent life, for example, and that can be like 3-4 volumes. And then you have epic science fiction fantasy titles that can go to maybe 30-40 volumes at a time. So manga can be really, really versatile. So manga is also highly narrative. It focuses on character and story. And the way that it's set up, it allows for a very sophisticated and detailed story and character development, which is very important, obviously, in animated films. And the funny thing is that when anime first started becoming worldwide, a lot of foreign readers, particularly European readers, would often relate reading Japanese manga as watching a film, which I think says a lot, right? I mean, how can a static comic book that has just pictures set in frames, how can that give a feeling of watching something move? And so that's what anime is. I mean, and what manga is. It really gives that versatility between all of these different mediums that come together to tell a story and to give character development, which I think a lot of students or a lot of young people relate with directly. The other thing about of manga is that due to the immense amount of manga that's produced, there's over 3,000 professional working manga artists in Japan today, and that's a very small country, even though there's a lot of people, and there are hundreds of titles coming out all the time. So because of the high amount of the volume of comics that are coming out, manga coming out in Japan today, actual categories have been established. Like, for example, the two common ones that you'll hear about is shoujo and shonen. So shoujo means girl comics, and shonen means guy comics, boy comics. It basically means that there are entire categories of manga that's specifically geared toward a gender or a subject matter or some kind of genre, which also, once again, says a lot. So just to summarize what I talked about here, for comics, manga, there's something for everyone. I mean, you can find a comic about a kid who bakes bread, and then there's another one about a ninja who is trying to find himself. I mean, there's so many variables. And ultimately, I think what we need to take away is that manga is a marriage. It's a harmonious marriage between art and storytelling that is very, very stimulating and appealing both to the eye and to the mind. So now that you know what manga is, what is anime? So anime is the generic. It's basically like the word manga. It's a Japanese term that specifies animation that is produced in Japan. Though nowadays you'll probably hear it loosely define a particular drawing style. Like, for example, I would consider myself an anime artist because I draw in the anime style. So you'll hear that a lot. So it's a very, very loose definition, obviously. A lot of popular manga titles are actually translated or reproduced into animated versions, like TV series. So for example, you have a manga series that might be like 10 volumes or something, and then it'll translate it to maybe like a 25, 30 episode TV series, which is very similar to Saturday morning cartoons in Japan. So, but it's different though, right? Because you have cartoons that are, what's a good example? Like SpongeBob. So you have, they're self-contained, they're self-contained, very, very simple, simple episodes that students can follow, that, kids can follow along. Anime tends to have a narrative. So it's one of those situations where if you miss an episode, you're going to miss storyline. So that's another key difference between typical cartoons in the US that are geared toward younger audiences and then anime. So here are a few examples. Pokemon. Pokemon, we all know Pokemon, right? Pokemon has been really popular in the US and worldwide for many years, and it actually started as a video game. So you see here, it's not even in color. So it was very, very early on. After that, it became trading cards. And then after that, they produced a TV series, which was very long, as well as actually 3 or 4 animated feature films, which have been domestically released in US theaters over the past few years. And finally, there was a manga that paralleled that. So, and then this right here is Naruto. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of Naruto. Naruto is an ongoing comic series. It's very long. It's got like 30 volumes. That's 460 chapters at 20, 30 pages each. So it's a really long series. And that's been recently translated into anime, which is also very long. And then there's actually also video games for Naruto as well. So basically, you'll see this kind of trend happening a lot. So when your students talk about a particular manga or anime, I would encourage that you actually go and try to find the different versions, because oftentimes the stories will be different. In manga, like there will be characters or story plots that might exist in the anime that does not exist in the manga, for example. So, you know, it's good to experiment and look around.
So why are students drawn to manga? As Jeannie mentioned before, there's a huge variety of storylines that your students will be interested in reading. It's not limited to just basically shoujo and shonen. There's high school dramas, there's space operas, there's fantasy stories, but it also can include hobbies like sports. You can have volumes of manga about basketball teams pursuing the tournament. You can have things about board games like Othello or Go. You can even have manga about cooking, and they'll actually include actual cooking recipes that the readers can try. So there's a huge range, and it's not just limited to children reading manga. Like I said, the cooking one in particular, you know, you have some housewife. Hey, there's a new sushi recipe I could try right here. So there's a lot to be said about the variety of manga. It's a huge variety of storylines, but it appeals to all types of different ages as well, depending on what your interests may be.